Hi, this is DIY-ified, and today we're going to be doing a DIY-ified's guide to do-it-yourself flamethrowers, beginner's edition. First off, we're going to go over some things you want to consider while deciding which or material to go with making your flamethrower or how to make your flamethrower. First you want to consider is safety. How safe do you want to go versus the other things you want to consider, which is how easy and how much you want it to cost. Throughout this presentation, we will be putting them on each type of flamethrower. We'll be rating on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst in each category, and 10 being the best. To start, let's go over the different types of homemade flamethrowers. First off, there is the fuel source plus fire flamethrower. This is commonly known as an aerosol can flamethrower, but an aerosol can flamethrower falls into this category. Next, you have a flamethrower gun, and then we have a Prometheus or arm mount. Let's start with the fuel source plus flamethrower. So essentially, this includes the aerosol can in a flamethrower, the most mini flamethrowers that involve blowing out fuel, and anything that basically involves, having a raw fuel source and a flame and just expelling the fuel source through the flame to make a flamethrower effect. This rate's pretty easy. I mean, about a 9, so it's pretty easy. Most anyone can do it, unfortunately. Its safety, it rates at a 2 because this is the most dangerous method, shy of directly lighting yourself on fire. And it costs, I rated it a 5 because while most of these materials needed to make these can be found around the house, they still cost money, these materials. If you are looking to make a flamethrower of your very own, you've probably experimented with this type of flamethrower. Next we have the different methods or ways of doing a fuel source plus flame method rated on a scale called the sophistication scale, which factors each of the 3 rating things we've been using for the different types of flamethrowers so far: cost, ease, and safety for each individual method. So first, at the very bottom there, we have aerosol can and flame. Because it is the least safe. It's the easiest, but mini flamethrowers are pretty easy too, and it costs more usually because the WD-40 costs money and stuff. Then we have mini flamethrowers. Some of them are kind of cool, but mostly they're more dangerous than cool. And then kind of like 4-ish, we have most any FSF system. I mean, there's not a ton of really good versions of this. These are usually just kids in their garage trying to get a quick flamethrower. So next we have the flamethrower gun. This includes like a super soaker plus an ignition system, a super soaker full of gasoline or something, some sort of aerosol on a mechanical trigger gun system, a spritzer bottle and ignition, essentially classified as anything that is held in 2 hands, but it can operate in 1 usually, sometimes, and is used like a gun. It can also include solenoid flamethrowers, such as systems that they made for their 100th anniversary. It's pretty good, and I would check it out. It rates pretty mediocre. Easy, it can be. Safe, it can be. And cost, it can be cheap or it can be expensive. It's kind of hard to rate this one because it has such a wide variety. So I feel like the sophistication scale will be more indicative of the ratings. Overall, it's definitely a step up from FSFs. It can be similar to the FSF, or it can be very different. It is closest to a military grade flamethrower and is usually safer, but can be more dangerous because it can also be more powerful. And it is also really safe because it has the ability to be dropped. So on the sophistication scale, the homemade flamethrower guns actually are kind of all across the board are the same. At the very bottom we have the super soakers. Mostly unsafe because they still have the risk of inhaling the flame and torching the entire system. And they're pretty easy. They're essentially a gun version of an aerosol can and flame. But it's slightly better because, you have a little bit more control, but not much. Then we have a spritzer bottle, kind of a little bit like my Prometheus flamethrower if you look up in my other videos. Though I made mine a Prometheus as opposed to just a gun. It could really go either way, the spritzer bottle idea. Then we have a mechanical system with an aerosol can, slightly higher. Still using aerosol, but usually the flame is staggered somewhat, so it doesn't have as much of a risk of blowing back and following it back into the can. Usually these take a little bit more thought, so they're probably going to be a little bit safer. And then up at the top we have some electrical flamethrowers, such as System's solenoid method. This is pretty sophisticated, and though it does cost a little bit more than the other ones and it's not as easy to make, it is definitely safer. After that, we get on to the Prometheus branch of flamethrowers. These are more true to like such as a superhero style flamethrower. These were originally made popular and pioneered by Everett Bradford, I believe, and this includes his pyro systems 1 through 3. And most any homemade pyro system also is included at a Prometheus, and they're usually spin-off of Everett's designs. My basic Prometheus system is also included, technically because it mounts on my arm and I can operate it one-handed. So that would be even that as a Prometheus technically. So they have a large range of different types. Most any flamethrower mounted on the arm or body with a fuel system mounted on the body is a Prometheus, and it can have internal or external ignition. Problems with the Prometheus include you can't drop it. It's mounted to you, so if you have problems with it, that becomes an issue often. It does offer a higher degree of control, however, with the flame usually, so that's slightly safer, and also only safer usually because of the extra degree of thought required to make them. These don't go together as easily, though they can be pretty easy. They are not usually as easy as some of the other ones. It's actually rated pretty bad. It's not always easy, as I was saying. It's not always safe because you can't always drop it, and it's still a flamethrower essentially. And it can cost, a lot to make them as well. But I added the awesome factor because people make these because they're just really cool. You have a more degree of control over the flame. You can make it come out of your wrist, your hand, or even your arm. So these have their own little category that people really enjoy them. So now we're going to look at how the homemade Prometheus is stacked up on the sophistication scale. Down at the bottom you can see my Prometheus flamethrower. Scripted bottle method, not super sophisticated, but it does the job. Um, Pretty basic. And then at the very top you can see the Everett Bradford Pyro Systems, some professionally done Prometheuses. Those are kind of pretty much the best you can get. Harder to make though, obviously. And then most people are somewhere in between with a homemade pyro system copy of Everett's, usually involving fuel delivery to a flame mounted on the arm. Or a little higher up, most homemade pyro systems involving fuel delivery to a flame mounted on the arm with ignition included. So these kind of have a range as well. So now that we know how to make the flamethrower, the different ways of making a flamethrower, there are some final things you should probably consider. One, this safe flamethrower. It is inherently unsafe. There's all kinds of risks involved with throwing fire that you should probably at least try to go over before you start using it. But just look at it this way, that it's going to be dangerous any way you look at it. Then also you want to look at, the list of things, because when you're building a flamethrower you tend to get really focused on what you're doing, sometimes especially if you're making a complex one, and you can forget safety rules. So if you look down the list, you can, after you finish building the flamethrowers and before you start using or testing it, it can give you a good idea on kind of what not to do. And just one other thing I want to address is the idea that a couple of people have been saying that their flamethrowers are sort of safe because they're using such a small amount of fuel that it's not going to hurt anybody or not going to hurt them. And to that I counter, all it takes is the amount of fuel needed to hold a lighter flame for 15 seconds to burn your house down, or less. So I'd say that yes, small take of butane, even if it's not mounted on your arm or in a gun, yes, that is enough to be unsafe.